Today on the Mr. Maple Show podcast, Matt and Tim count down the top 20 maples you may never have heard of.
Konnichiwa, y'all, and welcome back to the Mr. Maple podcast. I'm Matt. Got my brother Tim here with me. I think we got a fun concept set up for you today.
Guys, today we've got 20 Japanese maples that you haven't heard of yet that you need to know. And we're really excited about these. There's a bunch of cool plants on this list. Y'all, if you love Japanese maples, make sure that you are subscribed here to the Mr. Maple Show podcast. We're on your all major platforms. Give us a 5-star review. And also find us on YouTube. We do daily YouTube videos all about Japanese maples, and you'll want to check that out for sure.
The best way to support our podcast is shopping on Mr. Maple. So let's get into it. There's some crazy trees on this list. You know, if you've been to all of our open houses, you may have seen a few of these, but not all of them. There'll be some things that may have been here. If you're an extreme Mr. Maple fan and you dig, you might have heard of a few of these. A few of these might have made it out the door in person once or twice. But for the most part, these are trees that haven't hit our website yet. They're trees we haven't offered online yet, and I think people are going to be excited about them. You know, don't ask me when these are all coming out. I don't know. So some of these are in production. Some of these are sooner than others. We just wanted to wet your whistle. I know y'all enjoyed the hype one. We did the most hype trees releasing in 2024, and that was so well received that we kind of wanted to give you a more behind-the-scenes look at some of the most anticipated trees that you might not have heard about yet. So these are trees that Tim and I are keen on. We think they're very next level. They're interesting. Something about these caught our eye, and you probably haven't even heard their names yet.
So coming to number 20, we've got Acer Poypalam variegated.
This one doesn't even have a real name yet. This one is a seedling here at Mr. Maple of Acer Poypalam that is distinctly variegated. Now, we love Poypalam. It's got great bark interest, kind of get some striations in the bark. It's drought resistant. You know, it's in section palmata, so it's going to graft on to section palmata plants just like japonicums and shirosoloums. Very closely related Chinese maple. They are very durable. They're very heat resistant. I don't know what we're going to call this variegated form. We need to come up with a better name. I just realized that we hadn't actually named it when he said that. We put it on the list confidently like it already had a cultivar name. Poypalam variegated is pretty cool, though. It's got some swirling style variegation going on in a Poypalam seedling.
And I really, you know, this was a working name for us, and I guess that's how many times plants get the name variegated or variegata out there in the nursery trade. But I always hate it because, especially when we're shipping, because there's a billion different variegatas that could get confused with this plant when we're shipping out.
There you go, doing it too.
And here we are doing the exact same thing. Now, Poypalam is extremely drought tolerant. It has an amazing fall color, and this is a green upright Poypalam that has lots of little red variegation in there, and sometimes the leaf itself will twist a little bit where it's variegated. This is just a fun plant. Later on in the spring, it goes to like a yellow cream variegation, and in the fall, this goes to red on red variegation. Definitely a really cool tree.
Oh, I'm a big fan. It's very interesting. We've probably talked about it in 1 or 2 Area 51 presentations ever. It gets a good response. We're getting a good size one now in the ground, and it's been very stable. The variegation's been throughout the plant. We'll be getting this produced and probably a more refined cultivar name on this as it comes out. All right, coming here at number 19, we've got Acer Campbellii Bony Fingers.
Y'all, Bony Fingers is an Acer Campbellii.
What a marketing name.
There's not many Campbellii selections out there. Talon Buchholz has one called Exuberance. And I'm not sure who introduced Bony Fingers. But
for years, I thought it was a Talon, but I think we asked him and he said it wasn't.
And we got it through the Buchholz farm, so I have to ask Talon exactly where that may have originated. But Bony Fingers is kind of like a macawed out Acer Campbellii.
Yeah, it's weird. I do list this one zones 6 through 9, not 5 through 9. A little less cold tolerant for some of those people in the zone 5 range. It is like a Campbellii macawa, though. It's almost got a little bit of what you like about like something like Goshiki Koto Hime. Like it's got a little of that going on too. It's kind of tight clustering, gives you a little bit of Shishigashira, a little bit of Makawa vibes. It's an odd bird. Like, it just is out there. It's weird. It looks very much jagged. So I guess that's where it gets the name Bony Fingers. It's got all these jagged edges on it. It's a weird plant, weird name. Bony Fingers. We got like a skeleton reaching up through the graveyard for you. I don't know what the inspiration for this one was, but it's a really cool plant.
Now, the leaves on it are kind of unusual. They look like little fingers dangling down on it. It is really unusual with this Campbellii foliage and that Makawa'd out growth. Makes a fun dwarf out there in the landscape. If you're in a warm enough zone, definitely a plant you should definitely try out. If you're in a zone 5 or zone 6, you're probably pushing it quite a bit on zone 6, trying to grow Acer Campbellii. Coming at number 18, we've got a really cool plant. We've got Acer Pomatum Shin Yatsubusa. This is a Makawa-like tree that's in the Makawa family collection that we got from Don Shadow years ago.
Yeah, we were in the back with Don. He was taking us through some of his next level plants. And as Don was prone to do, he said, hey, would you like some signwood on this one? Well, the answer to that when Don says, would you like some signwood, is always yes. Shin means improved. So I guess this is improved Makawa Yatsubusa. I don't know. It's double improved Yatsubusa. So it was an introduction from Japan that Don brought back. He was really keen on it. We really like the shape of it. For us, it seems to be almost an even smaller version of tattoo, even slower growing, kind of tattoo-ish in its design. Maybe the tattoo of Japan, but Shin Yatsubusa, a really cool plant.
Now, the leaves itself look a little more like Makawa Yatsubusa, so it's not as serrated as tattoo can be, but the size is definitely there for tattoo. And Don was always one of these guys that we'd love to go visit and see what in the world he brought back from Japan. We would, before COVID, we went to the Nashville Lawn and Garden Show, and they'd have this huge show in Nashville, Tennessee, and we'd load up a 30-foot trailer full of plants and take and go sell at this lawn and garden show. And, we had a blast doing that. There's so many great customers from out there, but we always use this as an excuse to go visit a lot of our nurseryman friends in Tennessee, like Don. And
Don was so gracious with his time. I can tell you multiple years. I was a little scared some years we'd be out there with the animals, but multiple years we'd be out there. And 12-degree weather, and he's out cutting signwood with us. Older gentleman at that time, even out there cutting signwood with us in the cold. And then we got to go feed some camels or something after we get done with that. But
on our trips to Japan, though, if we go and visit people in Japan, they would say, oh, do you know Shadow Sun? And, he had a good rapport with a lot of the people in Japan, and he got a lot of cool plants to the United States, like Shin Yatsubusa.
Super cool, and it will be coming out on Mr. Maple. I think we've offered a very limited number of them in person at an open house, maybe once. I think we probably had like 6 or 7 maybe of them that made it up. So not many people have gotten this one yet. An interesting Makawa Yatsubusa type that will be hitting the market probably from us here first at Mr. Maple, and be looking for that one. It's one we'll be having again. All right, next up at number 17, and honestly, these are in no particular order. We do have our favorites at the top, but a lot of these are going to be ones you're going to be excited about and hear about at different times. So they'll all be out at different times. At number 17, we've got Acer Pictum Akakazi Yataka. Now, this is one from Japan named at Tsukasa Maple Nursery there. You've probably heard of Akakazi Nishiki, sometimes referred to as Acer Pictum, sometimes as Acer Truncatum. We listed as Acer Pictum. Really a great plant, very durable, very heat-tolerant plants. Now, what sets Akakazi Yataka as a separate plant is it is a seedling from Akakazi Nishiki that is way more stable and way more white and pink.
Now, the reason why people often list Acer Pictum dissecum as Acer Truncatum is because it looks like a truncatum. But the thing is in Japan itself, there are no truncatums in the wild. It's typically from China, where the Pictum dissecum grows naturally in Japan. And these selections are of Japan origin. And so Yataka Tanaka at Tsukasa Maple, he's the one who introduced Tsukasa Silhouette.
It's pretty good if he's putting his name on it.
And oddly enough, Don Shadow is the one who named it the Silhouette part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just talking about Don a second ago.
Don's got this sweet gum in America called Slender Silhouette. So when he saw Tsukasa Maple Nursery had this narrow form of maple, he said, how about Tsukasa Silhouette?
Well, Akakazi Yataka is a really cool selection that we saw when we were there in Japan. And he basically found a seedling from Akakazi Nishiki that showed even more variegation. And it's got that white sickle variegation, where it's just got that twisting on the actual leaf itself. Really awesome, really fun Pictum, Disicum. And Akakazi Yataka is basically like an improved version of Akakazi Nishiki.
Yeah, we'll keep grafting this one and get it out there. It's hard to get truncatum rootstocks sometimes. So if you ever have truncatum rootstocks, send them to Mr. Maple. We'll get some of these Pictums out there faster. We like to put them onto truncatum because they make the best version on truncatum, but that's one we have in production. We'll be getting it more production over at the Buckholz Nursery as well. And you'll start to see this one in higher numbers as it is an improved form of the Akakazi Nishiki.
Now, next up, coming in at number 16, we've got Acer Roffner Yano's Gift. And this was a gift that he gave us when we visited World Maple Park. I'm going to let you collect seed off of all my cool trees. And this is one of the selections that we made from those seeds.
Yeah, there was a seedling there of Rufinervae, and somebody could probably tell us that the snake barks are the most promiscuous. So we're listed as the same as the parent plant it came off of, but it could be a hybrid with any of his other snake barks there. We listed this one as Yano's Gift, and we had such a great time visiting Yano. We got to go to World Maple Park when he was alive, and Yano was so gracious. He had 2 tour guides meet with us, actually 3, but he had 2 at the gate as soon as we got there. And they kind of greeted us, and Yano spent the next probably 4 hours showing us around World Maple Park. We do some video stuff of that. We need to edit down and get it out there as well for you guys. Yano has since passed. He passed last year around September. He was so kind with his time, and I'm so glad that Tim and I got to go and spend time with him. There was a particular Rufinervae there that he said threw a lot of variegated seedlings. So Tim and I collected some seed off that. I actually have a nice sized tree in my garden of this now. I mean, the tree itself is probably 12, 14 foot, so quite vigorous for a snake bark, distinctly variegated. Now, this one first leafs out with a little bit more border, but as the season goes on, the white margins get deeper into the leaf. So it gets even more variegation into the leaf, gets even brighter looking. Cool variegated snake bark, though. And, I love having trees named after Yano and Peter Gregory, so I got to get Yano in there as well. Such a nice guy, and I was so just appreciative of his time he spent with us. He took us into World Maple Park. He took us into the Maple Cafe at World Maple Park and bought us lunch. Showed us all of his maple themed clothing that he displayed during the winter months there. So he had stuff when he was out of leaf. He had all his maple kimonos and things. We definitely have to do a little piece sometime on World Maple Park and tell you more about our friend Yano-san.
I think World Maple Park was amazing and it was outstanding. But I think the passion that Masayoshi Yano had for the trees, it was something that was next level. And that was really the story behind the whole place, was how passionate and how much he loved these trees. Yano's Gift, more specifically, was a seedling from a Rufinerve that Yano had selected from Hatsuyuki that was even more variegated than Alba Limbatum is itself, and showed a lot of variegation. And it's not in the United States. I mean, this was Yano's selection of a snake bark that had a lot of great variegation, through a lot of good variegated seedlings. And so we collected seedlings from it, and that's where we named Yano's Gift.
We'll have to get back over to Japan, and hopefully someone's being a good caretaker there of World Maple Park now that Yano's passed. I asked several of my friends who are over there. Just a cool place and a cool guy. Yano, not a lot of people know this, he got his start into maples as a food photographer. So he was a very prominent food photographer. He would take photos, like high-end photos of restaurants, and they would have often garnishments of maple leaves. So they would have a maple leaf in the photo, just kind of accentuating the steak or the sushimi or whatever he was photographing that day. And over time, he started to select some maples for food photography. And his heart got more into the maples than the food photography. So soon he was just taking pictures of the maple, get the food out of there. And that was kind of how his passion got started for Japanese maples.
So coming in at number 15, we've got Acer Pomatum Nemo.
You might have seen Dr. Murray on our 1700s podcast. This was a seedling selection made by Dr. Murray and given to us. It is an incredible blaze orange. It's really a different color than most of the other oranges. It stands out to me for Mystic. We did offer a very small set of these at an open house last year. People got out of their car and sprinted. It was kind of crazy. We will be offering bigger sets of Nemo. I like the color on it. We just threw a working name on it originally because we like the color. Of course, Finding Nemo's a little orange clownfish, so the orange made sense there. It is a blaze orange, though. It's a very picked up bright orange. I mean, it could be Tim's hunter cap orange for sure. It's got an intensity to it in the spring that's a little different than most, and I really stood out to us. Now, this is a Makawa Yatsubusa style, so it's going to have that density to it. And again, a selection made by our good friend Dr. Murray. You can see him in our 1700s podcast, one of our mentors here locally in Japanese maples.
And the only place you'll be able to find Nemo is on MrMaple.com. So make sure to check that out. We were going to have a bunch more of those coming on. We did up that in our production schedule here at Mr. Maple. And being that it's an orange Makawa type, I mean, it's going to sell out quickly. It is a slower grower. And coming at number 15, Acer Poypalam Nemo.
All right, at number 14, we've got Acer Shirasawadam Agape. Now, this is a cool one you won't see a lot. Acer Shirasawadam Agape is a unique style full moon maple. I did a little short on it last year, so if you follow us close enough on shorts on our YouTube channel, you might have saw a clip of this. It did go pretty viral for us for shorts. Really unique next level Acer Shirasawadam.
Yeah, this was one that came over from Europe at some point, and it is pretty awesome. It's got that large rounded foliage to it. It's got a really nice fall color, and I believe it has something to do with Usagi Ujimbo.
I'm a comic book nerd, but I don't know enough about this. I know that I had the action figure of Usagi Ujimbo when he was with the Ninja Turtles. So he was the rabbit samurai that came over and hung out with the Ninja Turtles. But he has a long career in Japan as a comic book on his own. So he has a shared universe with the Ninja Turtles, but he's actually his own person. There's a samurai rabbit, and he takes on like mythological creatures in Japan in his comics. Because after somebody told me this, I had to learn more about it. And I go down these weird rabbit holes, pun intended. And Usagi Jimbo, he has his hair up like a samurai. His ears are tied together. I don't know what he has to do with Aigasa. Somebody told me it had something to do with that. I'd have to have somebody that was more inclined to know, a little bit about that. But it's a fun plant. This is a large leaf Shirasawadam. It has a little bit more your traditional style Shirasawadam leaf. The leaf is kind of somewhat between like a Takinagawa japonicum and a Shirasawadam, so it's a lot larger. It's really striking. It's a good color leaf. It's got a more of an emeraldy jade color. Great fall colors on this one too. I've had it be blazing orange with yellows in it, with reds in it. We're going to be offering it more and more. I love some of the classic style Shirasawadams, and this one really hits that quintessential Shirasawadam look for me.
And we've really got a number of Japonicum and Shirasawadams that really aren't in the United States that we're going to have to be doing more of. I mean, there's Seiyu, there's Luna, Oji no Sen, and
Katsan Woods on all those this year. So
and Aegasa's on the top of that list. I mean, they are all amazing plants that really just not in the nursery trade here in the United States. And like they may be a little more common over in Europe. But, I mean, there's so many amazing Japonicums and Shirasawadams out there. I've often wondered, why don't people just make a collection of Japonicums? I mean, there's only, at least 30 or 40 that are in the nursery trade, Japonicums and Shirasawadams? I mean,
you have all of them here, yeah.
You could do a whole full moon garden. I mean, and it wouldn't be as difficult to collect as all the palmatums. Mm-hmm. You could actually almost collect all the Japonicums and Shirasawadams in a garden.
All right, y'all, coming here at number 13, we've got a very rare one. Now, we actually did film this one in a top 5. It hadn't aired at the time we're recording this podcast, but I believe by the time this actually airs, it will be in Dan Everett's top 5 maples that I shot with him. We've got Acer Pomatum Red Sparklers. Now, this is a selection by another friend of ours from the Maple Society. We actually had this tree originally, and it had more, if you have it more shade, it's more of a cream reticulated. But when it gets in that fall color, especially, you can get some fiery red going on in the reticulation. That's where it gets the Red Sparkler name from.
And this tree is outstanding. When I saw this tree, it just knocks my socks off. I mean, it has some of that bright red over top of that creamy, almost like ghost-like reticulation to it. It's an excellent little small tree. It has that it factor when you're looking at a Japanese maple.
Especially in fall color.
I mean, when you look at a tree and you say, dang, you know that's a good tree. And that's what this tree does. It makes your jaw drop. And it's going to be one of those trees that as soon as you learn about this tree is quickly going to becoming one of our top sellers on MrMaple.com.
Yes, it stands out. Red Sparkler is a great name. I believe the name was actually put on it by Bill Hibbler. So it's got a good name there. Bill Hibbler is the current president of the Maple Society. I originally had this tree just as Eichmann's. So I think it's the exact same plant. I'm not sure yet. Turned into Red Sparklers. Hadn't offered that before, but I like Red Sparklers a lot better. Just a dope plant. One you'll be seeing come here first at MrMaple.com.
Coming at number 12, we're going to be talking about one of the Flora Wonder Collection introductions that have not been introduced yet and really is not out there. We're talking about Acer Pomatum Lily L.
This thing was sick. Whenever possible, we'll grab talent and ask them questions. It It was after we finished the purchase agreement. We were actually eating cheeseburgers with Talon and his wife. We went out for cheeseburgers to celebrate the purchase. And we went to one of Talon's favorite burger joints there in Portland and had a ball. It was just a fun time. We were sitting around talking, and Tim and I are, we talk. We try to at least keep the conversation not all maple. So we keep it to at least 50% questions. That way we're not bugging him to death. But I had to ask him about Lily L. It was one we saw there. He'd actually named it after one of his wife's good friends. This is a reticulated ghostly tree that has extreme white variegation in it. So it's almost like a ghost series mixed with an ukigumo.
Almost like a Peve multicolor. Almost
in some ways, I think it's even wider. I think it's more one color white. Now, again, I'm learning about this tree too. We have it in production there at the Floral Wonder Farm. It has a very elongated leaf with a very ruffled style leaf to it. And the colors on it have been extravagant.
I mean, this is a tree that it's one of those trees that is it's very remarkable. It is unlike anything else you're going to see. And this is a tree that for us, it's going to be a new hit coming out of the Buckholtz farm. Yeah, it's one, his hits just keep coming. I mean, if it's one Talon wanted to put a name on, it's probably worthy of cultivar introduction there. It's fairly new to us, but it is one in production. It's impressed us for the colors. I've really liked everything it brings to the table. I think it's going to be an even paler shade than most with that reticulated. It's almost like a different shaped leaf ukigumo in some ways. I really, really like it. So coming in here at number 11, we've got Acer Poypalam Ladybug. Now this is a very dark red to kind of bright picked up fire glow kind of red monawa form. It didn't hold for us as long as Red Panda, but it is a nice plant. Like Red Panda out-achieved it for longevity, but this one's color was very nice. I really liked how I would compare it more to Fire Glow in the color. Yeah, and this one just seems to have a nice little rounded habit to it. Real slow growing. Ladybug, it's an outstanding tree. We've offered this at one or two open houses as well. This is one that a few people did pick up at open houses, but most people haven't seen it. Because, even at the open houses, the sets that we had were limited. Mm-hmm. Those monawa types, they're extremely popular. Ladybug, it's a really cool tree, and it's got a good name to it too. All right, guys, coming in here at number 10, another open house one. Some people found this one. I think Grayson Schisler found it and about had a heart attack. Earthfire. Now, this is Acer Poypalam Earthfire. We originally had this tree under Earth Mound. I found out they are the same plant. When I first bought this plant, I got it from Talon Buckholtz. Bought a stock plant from him back before we owned that farm. And it came to me as Earth Mound. And I asked Talon, I was like, what's Earth Mound? He goes, I don't have a clue. That's a pine, right? I said, well, man, you screwed up because I'm keeping it. It turns out this is an introduction from New Zealand. It's not out there a lot in the trade. I think it's starting to be. We're going to be offering it here on our website here at Mr. Maple again. We did sell a set probably of 20 of these in person at open house. Incredible reticulated form that is low and spreading with a heavy Matsumura style leaf. I don't know if I consider it truly a lace leaf, but it's like that. It looks a lot like a lace leaf. So it looks really incredible next to filigree or Felis or Sweet Lorraine. It kind of fits into that category a little bit, but the leaf is heavily Matsumura. It kind of looks more shape-wise like a Kiyohime. Yeah. And it is so cool. I mean, it's one of those types that has a ghost-like variegation and a Kiyohime type shape that's almost semi-pendulous as it does that. I mean, this thing is outstanding. There's nothing else like it. And that's what drives me to say this is a really cool plant. This is what put it at number 10, is there's nothing else like it. And the colors it gives can just be almost like metallic-y pink purple. I mean, it is outrageous on its colors. And it's one of those trees that the more we produce it, the more I like this tree. I've noticed that you want to give it some protection from the hot afternoon sun for really the best growth rate on it, because this is a real slow growing tree. But Earthfire is one that stands alone. Yeah, really cool plant, low and spreading. Might as well be a lace leaf because it's heavily Matsumura and it's got that Kiyohime shape, so it kind of alludes to that. But it's really more of a Matsumura that's Kiyohime'd out, for lack of a better term. It's a really cool plant. Dark purples on it, sometimes metallic-y purples. I mean, you can kind of get some shades that you might get in a Magi Shiguri. So imagine that in a low spreading form with a heavily divided leaf. Really enjoying that one. All right, coming in here at number 9, we've got another monawa form. This one is Mr. Miyagi. This is a monawa seedling that was found by our manager at the Buckholz farm, Joel Johnson. And he really loved this monawa type. He kept sending me photos throughout the years and saying, look at this tree. Look, it's just got a phenomenal shape. And check out the fall color. And ended up getting introduced as Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah, kind of a funny name there. You know, everybody loves Karate Kid. All 80s children grew up loving Mr. Miyagi. I think a lot of people, as soon as you say the term bonsai, that's people's quickest form of reference. They're like, oh, you do bonsai trees like Mr. Miyagi? Like, no, not at all. But anything can be turned into a bonsai. So this is kind of a monawa type that will work great for bonsai for a lot of you that reminisce on Mr. Miyagi. And
we're talking about the old Karate Kid, not this new one with Will Smith's kid.
I don't think that one's new anymore. That's how old you are.
Y'all, Mr. Miyagi.
This new movie that's 10 years old.
Mr. Miyagi is one of those plants that is just, it has an even more bonsai-like form than Makawi Etsubusa, if that can even be a thing. And that's one of the reasons this is a really cool tree. Again, found by our manager at the Buckholz farm, Joel Johnson. An amazing new monawa selection in the monawa family.
All right, coming in here at number 8, we got another one from the Buckholz farm. Now, this is one that Talon had found and set aside, and I stole it to put a name on it. I didn't steal it. We did buy the farm, so I guess we're allowed to do that. I like to name trees after people. I've had Hot Blonde. A lot of you know that I named Pink Princess when I was having Carolina. My wife and I were having our first daughter. We put Pink Princess on one. For an honor of my daughter, Tinsley, there's a small leaf pink form at Buckholz farm that he's been evaluating for many years. It's in what would you say, like a 40 gallon? I mean, it's a big plant.
Maybe 30 minutes big.
Yeah, it's been there a minute. The tree itself is probably 5.5, 6 feet tall by 4.5 foot wide. So it's a very mature tree at this point. The foliage on it is tiny. So this is a extreme tiny leaf Oridino Nishiki style. I have some pictures with my hands in the foliage, and a lot of the foliage is around the size of like a nickel.
I've never seen an Oridino Nishiki style with such small foliage as is on Acer Poypalam, Daddy's Girl.
Yeah, so I like to put names on trees without specifically putting the family member's name in it. So instead of calling it Tinsley, I just called it Daddy's Girl.
She really is a Daddy's Girl.
Right. Well, it's one of those ones that it's kind of near and dear. We put people's, I like to name trees after people, but in ways that other people enjoy them. So everybody's got a Daddy's Girl. I mean, how many of our customers, like Mina Malad, Bearded Bonsai, they had little girls this year, and it's something everybody can enjoy. Instead of just putting my kid's name on it, it's like they know that one's named after them, but it's got something special. Now, I was joking that I was going to name a tree after Hicks and call it Mama's Boy because he likes Amy way more than me. She said that didn't sound as nice as Daddy's Girl, calling him Mama's Boy.
But this is a tree that I really enjoyed. It almost made our top 5 most outrageous trees at the Buckholz nursery that we filmed before we were actually purchasing Buckholz farm. We've aired it as part of Buckholz Week on our YouTube channel. Go check that out if you haven't. This one almost made it there under small leaf variegated because this was a really cool tree that we were shocked by. But again, it didn't have a name on it yet. And once we bought the farm, Matt was like, hey, I've got the name.
I've kind of been thinking about naming one after Tinsley for a while, and Daddy's Girl had been in the back of my head. So, the tree just kind of fit perfectly, being that small leaf pink. Really just fit well for Daddy's Girl. So you'll see that coming out here first at Mr. Maple. We have it in production this year, and I think it's going to be a very fun small leaf Oridino Nishiki style. So it'll be fun for bonsai people or landscape collectors. Basically a much more tiny leafed Oridino. All right, coming in here at number 7, we got another next level plant. I could put this one up way at the top. Acer Pomatum Pink Panther.
No. Wasn't that the Pink Panther theme? Yeah. Anyway, really cool plant. This tree has almost like an Osakazuki style leaf, but guys, in the springtime, this thing is a hot pink.
I'm just thinking, if I sit here awkwardly looking at you, how much longer will you have?
I was like, did I get this wrong? Was I doing the Inspector Gadget one or something? But
maybe, I don't know. Anyway, Pink Panther. This one is cool, guys. It is insane on the color. It's another one selected that I didn't select it. A friend of mine selected it, but I wonder if it has some Acer Laburnum influence in it. It's got some next level colors. A lot of plants that have those next level colors do. I think this one's going to look absolutely insane next to Hot Blonde, or if you want to put this one in the spring, next to any of those, high intensity pinks or reds, it's going to blow you away because that pink is so next level, so full, so solid. I mean, I think hot blonde's a natural pairing with this one, but there's a lot that would look absolutely out of this world.
Now, the bark does look very much like it's got some olive arenum influence. The foliage is somewhere between like an olive aranum and like an Osakazuki. I'm leaning a little more towards that Osakazuki style foliage, but the pink color it's
hot pink. I mean, it's Barbie pink.
Now, I will say that the pink color is just for the springtime, and then it goes from that pink color to a green. So it is going to be one of those, like, think of it as almost like an Osakazuki that has like a Reuben coral pink kind of color.
I've got it. Spring. It's the Stanley Cup pink that all the chicks are fighting over right now. There's literal fist fights from Christmas for people going over those Stanley Cups. And my sister-in-law gave my wife one. I was like, hey, you know what this is going for, the secondary market? She bought one for like months ago, like online. I guess when they weren't as hyped up as they've gotten because they just liked that they were Barbie pink. But those things have gotten insane. It is that neon Pink Panther Barbie pink.
I know the exact color you're talking about because my wife was in charge of her cousin's Christmas shopping because she was having a baby, and they had to get her daughter a Stanley pink a cup, and we had to chase that thing down, and that was a nightmare this Christmas.
There were some people, there's videos of people fist fighting. So maybe there'll be people fist fighting at open house over Pink Panther. We'll see. It is one that's likely going to hit the market maybe this year, maybe next year. We'll throw some pictures up. You'll see why it's insane. I won't say the color lasts insanely long. It does fade to a green, but when it hits its pink, this might be the pinkest tree of all time.
And I don't know if I've got photos that do this justice. So unfortunately for the people who are watching this on YouTube, you may just have to wait and get one of these plants in person. And by then, hopefully we'll have some good photos of it from this spring. But Pink Panther, this is a killer plant coming at number 7 that you're going to have.
I'm putting one out this spring, next to a hot blonde and a mystic jewel. And I think it's going to be colors. It may be the pinkest pink of all time. Now, again, it does fade to a green, but this may be the most intense pink of them all.
Coming at number 6, we've got Acer Bajurianum Sliding Rock.
Now, this is a seedling selection we made here at MrMaple. This is a trident maple that is extremely weeping. It was actually a seedling from Angio weeping. Now, if many of you know Angio weeping, it does tend to be more of a weeping cherry type tree. So this one has a central leader that grows up and then it weeps down from there. We're finding Sliding Rock to be a little bit more Ryusei style weeping so far. So we've really been impressed with this one. It does leaf out with a little bit more of an orangish hue to it as well, which is kind of fun, and has an extremely pendulous nature to it for an Acer Bajurianum.
I think originally a lot of people thought that Angio weeping was going to be that Ryusei style. And then we would go out to like the J.C. Rouse and Arboretum and we'd be looking at their Angio weeping, and it would be a mature specimen that still had weeping branches to it, but it had a really nice upright shape to it rather than your traditional weeping habit that this one originally was thought to have had.
Now, many of your traditional Japanese maples, especially in Japan, will be named after mountains or waterfalls that are near them. We did name one Looking Glass Falls, which is one of the most predominant waterfalls in our area. Now, being from Western North Carolina, we grew up going to Sliding Rock. Sliding Rock's a big rock you can slide down in Pisgah National Forest. Unfortunately, I have to pay to park there now, but I guess that's all over the nation. You have to pay to park in the national parks. But they did go that one pay first. But I look forward to taking my kids there. The water is always ice cold. Doesn't matter if you go in July or not. You're getting a dunk in there. But it's a huge rock that you can slide down this water feature into a pond below in. Sliding Rock was just another one of those water features here in Western North Carolina that when we thought about what was predominant in our region, and we were looking for names for weeping trees, Sliding Rock just really made a lot of sense.
And Sliding Rock does have that more pendulous habit. I mean, it is more of a weeper rather than an upright with weeping habit that like Angio weeping is. And so I was really excited about that. But I do have beef with the parking. I mean, North Carolina gave the national parks the land for the national parks.
Now we got to pay. And
the rule was that they could not charge for entrance. And so what they did to get around that was say, okay, we're not charging to entrance. We're just going to pay. You're going to have to pay if you park. So if you got to go use the restroom, or if you actually want to get out and enjoy the park, you're going to have to pay. It's like, yeah, that leave that to some people in the government to find an extra way to charge you for something that you shouldn't.
They've made it too hard for people to film there too now. That's one of my other beefs. But anyway, we'll move on. Number 5. This is the airing our grievances with the government podcast. How long you got? This just turned into a 6-hour episode. All right. Coming here at number 5, we've got Acer truncatum Inko Nishiki. Now, you might have heard us mention this one once or twice, but you really hadn't seen it too much yet. This is one we hope to offer. We're getting the production up on it at Buckholtz Nursery, so that helps a little bit. This one has to be grafted on a truncatum predominantly for its best growth. This is another one from Japan that is absolutely bonkers. It is white when it first leaves out, fading to a pink, and then fading back to a white. It's probably more in that Akakazi Tanaka Acer Pictum Dissicum kind of family, so it's a little bit more different than your typical Acer Pictum. Feels a little bit more of that style bark, that style division to it.
It does. I'd really have to get a geneticist to come in and figure out if it's Pictum Dissicum or Truncatum, because you do have a little more of the points on the leaf. On the lobes.
This one's weird.
So it is unusual and different. And the thing is about Inko Nishiki is it just gives you that creamy white kind of yellow, creamy yellow at first, and that creamy white.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is one of the most variegated. If it's a truncatum, it's one of the most variegated truncatums I've ever seen. If it's a Pictum Dissicum, it's still one of the most variegated Pictum Dissicums I've ever seen. It's almost like you cross something like a Naguri Nishiki with a truncatum. And it's one of those plants that out there in the garden shines even better than it does in the greenhouse. We've got one at Matt's house, and the more I see this plant, the more I love it.
Absolutely next level. I can't get enough Pictums and Truncatums, so whatever you want to call it, it's dope. It's just so next level. That color, it makes me think more Pictum just because of the level of color it has to it. I'm a huge fan of what this one does, though, and it's one we'll be offering first here at Mr. Maple. This one came to us from Japan without a name on it. We actually looked it up in Yano-san's book for maples and found a match to it and confirmed that with Yano-san while he was alive, showed it to him and got a confirmation that he believed that was the same tree. So we're going forward with that name Inko Nishiki on there because, hey, we got the confirmation from the guy that wrote the book. It was correct. So you can't beat that.
Coming in at number 4, we've got Acer Pomatum Munkawa. And this is a selection by our friend Keith Johansson. And he had Metro Maples in Texas. And he is a genius. He's a certified genius. He'll tell you himself, I'm a certified genius.
Keith's now subbing the channel. I saw his thing pop up on there. Really got a exciting email the other day from Keith. I hadn't talked to him probably since the pandemic. Just lovely. I'll throw some pictures in actually here. He's been working on some bonsai in Italy. He moved to Italy to be closer to his grandkids right before the pandemic, which turned out to be a great move. Just a fun guy. One of my favorite maple people. One of the funniest people ever walked the face of the earth. One of the few people that could call Talon Buckholtz a son of a bitch to his face in a joke, and Talon think it's the funniest thing
Talon
ever.
Laughed his butt off over that. I could not believe that.
Keith's got a way of saying jokes that he just can't be mad at him. Keith can say the most offhand offensive jokes to the entire Maple Society, and you think they would just lose their mind, and their teardrops coming off the faces of people laughing so hard because Keith's just so... Keith, he's got it. We'll have to get him on the podcast. You guys will see what we're talking about.
And it really was a good move for him to move to Italy before. I mean, he wouldn't have got to see his grandkids if he wouldn't have moved to Italy before then. And that was his ultimate plan, was to get to spend time with his grandkids.
We've been exchanging some emails. I was glad to see him with his grandkids, and I was glad he sent me a bunch of pictures of some of his different truncatum bonsais he's working on in Italy. So, guy's still involved in maples, enjoying his retirement, enjoying his grandkids. And
now, if you believe Keith, Munkawa is an Acer Shirasalam X Palmatum. And Keith said he was getting off the truck a Makawi Atsubusa and an Acer Shirasalam Moonrise, and they were both in full and blossom.
He's a certified genius.
And he hand crossed the two and looked through the seedlings, and the one that looked the most like Moonrise, he said, hey, this one's got some of that Moonrise orange going on. I'm naming this Munkawa. Now,
Keith and Carl Munn are two of the funniest people to get together. They're both hilarious, and when they're together, they're just the laughs don't stop the whole time because he gets Carl going. Now, Carl's a good buddy of his. Keith claims that this is a complete hybridization going on with Moonrise and Makawi Atsubusa. So whether you want to believe that he completely crossed these two or not, the colors show up. Like, I was like, I don't believe him, and then I got one of these. And then it had a lot of what I like about Moonrise in a Makawi Atsubusa. It came out with some pink apricots. It got some yellows in it. And I was like, I'm starting to be a believer here, Keith.
But you're
kind of winning me over here, buddy.
But you got to think, it's really difficult to actually do a hand cross because most of the time maples self themselves. And then if you're looking through Makawa seedlings, if I look through a Makawa Yatabusa seedling set from, one of our big trees at the Buckholtz farm that did not have a moonrise near it,
you might get some.
You still might find something that looks like moonrise if that's what you're looking for, and if that's what you're selecting for, you might find something that looks similar to that. So it is.
It's a goofy name. It's like Nanyat. It's a combination of multiple names for Carl Munkawa. So you've got to play on Makawa with Munkawa.
Those conglomerations are just the worst.
The names are funny. Yeah, him with the worst jokes. We about got kicked out of a German restaurant because of the worst jokes with Keith and Carl. I love those guys, man. I need to get them hanging out some more. I'd love for them to get back over here to a Maple Society event. We need to do a roundtable podcast with Carl Munn and Keith Johansson. Get them a few German beers and see how that goes. Anyway, Munkawa, I think it's super next level. This one's one I plan on getting out there into Mayday-like numbers, into Japanese Princess-like numbers, into Red Panda-like numbers, into Koi-like numbers, because I like this plant, y'all. I think it brings something. It's one of the next best color variants for me on a Makawa Yatsubusa form. I've got one of these in my garden. We'll need to start talking about it more and showing it more as we get it out there. But dadgum, I like the colors. It really has something extra for a Makawa form.
It does, and it seems to be a good grower for us. I mean, it's not as tight and slow as Mayday is. It seems to be a little faster than that. It still seems to be a small dwarf, but of the Makawa variants, it's a good grower.
Probably compare it more to Koi in its growth rate, which is a little more vigorous than some of the other Makawas.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just a beautiful plant all the way around. It just puts out unique colors in your Makawa garden. And when we're looking out there, it's like, hey, that needs to be produced more.
All right, y'all, we're all the way down to the top 3. And we cheated on number 1. I'll just go ahead and tell you. The top 3 Japanese maples that you haven't heard of. Coming here at number 3, this is so next level. I've had this tree for over 10 years. The first time I got it, I didn't realize it was what it was. And I just realized how great it is. And I'm getting into heavier production. It got put on the back burner. Then it got brought back up to the forefront once we realized how special this tree is. And that's Acer Poypalam Silver Sword. Now, this is a variegated form of a linear lobulum. So think Koto no Ito with reticulated veining.
I mean, this is like a linear lobum selection of Ukigumo. I mean, it is outstanding on the years. It's so white. It is amazing. We originally got this under the name variegated linear lobum from a Maple Society member, and we said, oh, this is cool. Maybe this thing reverted. And turns out it doesn't revert.
We were looking for, what we expected was Hagoromo, Hazuruno style variegation. Hazuruno is a variegated Hagoromo. We expect it to look more like that.
Like an Arita no Nishiki style with some pinks or whites in there. And in our conditional greenhouse setting, the first year or two after we evaluated it, they were young and vigorous. It didn't show as much variegation as some ghost types may not do. And so, it got put on the back burner. And then,
man, were we wrong?
Were we wrong? I mean, this tree is outstanding, and it can give unreal colors of reticulation, of white. It is outrageous, and it's a linear lobum, so it's the first of its kind.
I think this goes to show why you have to evaluate trees multiple years. I mean, you might get a tree from graft that doesn't express all of its traits right away as a young graft, or it's in a greenhouse in a hot setting and it washes it out, so you don't see what's special about the style. I mean, I would express that this even has a Higasiyama element to it, so it looks better in the ground than it does in the greenhouse, and it's going to have more of that white floating cloud look to it. I've seen some examples of this in the Pacific Northwest that, I mean, literally insane colors. It looked like, an Ukigumo or a Naguri Nishiki layered onto a linear lobulum style foliage, which is so next level. Silver Sword, great name. I'm all in on this one. We're going to be producing a lot of it at the Buckholtz farm as well as here at Mr. Maple. You'll see it appearing first here on Mr. Maple. I've got some photos on the website. Doesn't even come close to doing it justice. We'll be getting this one into production, getting some better pictures of it. I'm sold.
Coming at number 2, we've got one that's near and dear to our heart. This is an introduction by us from the Area 51 collection. This is Acer Poypalam Agape.
Yeah, so this was actually a seedling collected by Talon Buckholtz. He sent it to us and said, check this out, guys. Maybe put a name on it. he sent us a listing before we bought Buckholz Nursery of a few of his introductions. And so the last two here on the list are actually from that time. Talon was retiring, and he said, here's some of my work, see what you want to do with it, basically. So he sent us some ready-made introductions, to be honest with you. This one is likely a seedling from Alpenweiss. So probably has some sister seedling similarities, at least in its lineage, to that of like eye candy. Agape, we like the name. Agape means God's love for man. My Aunt Marilee, who's near and dear to us, my mother's sister passed away probably about 12 years ago now. She had Agape 77 on her tag, and it was a way she witnessed to people. She went through cancer for a long time, and one of her ways to open up and to talk to people was her tag that said Agape. So kind of a fun reference there for our family to be named after my Aunt Mary. Just a godly, awesome woman. So Agape was a fun one to be putting on a name. But why we like this tree so much is that it is insanely white. So where eye candy brings those pinks and purples, Agape is pale white with that same style variegation.
And you know, there are many Higashiyama styles, but eye candy is one of the pinkest. And this is one of the whitest of any of those. And you might get a slight bit of baby pink in there in first, but then it goes to that pure white very quickly on Agape. This is a tree that has rocked it out for us, and it's a tree that we love. I mean, we've been waiting for years to put the right Agape on the right tree, and we found this tree. Matt and I both looked at each other and we said, that's it. That's the tree we're naming Agape. We've
held that name for over 10 years, and it was going to take something special to actually get that name. So we really like this one. We've got it into production here. We've got a first set of these grafting. It'll probably be at least a year or two. Now, we did have this one in evaluation before it got into production, so it won't take that long. A lot of the evaluation process was already done by Talon. Again, we kind of got a ready-made name with this one. So it was a cultivar ready for a name. And we put one of our favorites on there. So it's nice. It's fun to name trees after people that aren't really named after people. It's a little insider there, but a very godly woman that had a big impact on Tim and mine's life was our Aunt Mary Lee, and Agape's name for her.
And coming at number one, we've got our Acer Pseudobalam hybrid.
Yeah, so we cheated on this one. We got a number one, but we've got a whole series here at number one. I think that's cheating just a little bit. Now, not all these are locked in names, so we may play with the names a little bit.
And we're not sure what we're going to call the series.
Yeah, it's going to accompany our Heat Seeker series, which you know are Acer Olivianums. That's our heat tolerant plants. Well, these are our Pseudobalam. These are going to be our cold tolerant plants. And I don't know if all of them are going to make the listing. We may pick the top 5 that make it. We'll see. There's actually over 15 trees in this collection right now. Now, only the best will rise to the top. There's some funny names in there. Tim's got Arctic Desire. I thought it sounded like an Inuit love novel, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what Arctic Desires is, but I think I imagine Fabio on the cover of the book.
I had Kate Bradley and me, and we were sitting in there, and we were like, we can't have code names on these things.
I mean, Polar Bear and Ice Ice Baby were funny enough.
We've got to get code names on these trees to evaluate, so we can actually understand what they are. One is called Arctic Blaze. And this one was pretty neat for me because Arctic Blaze is an upright that leaves out kind of burgundy-ish, has red burgundy new growth, turns green, and has a good red fall color.
We're talking about a red Pseudobalam. I think that's super next level.
Next up, we've got Arctic Glow. Now, Arctic Glow had a unique yellow-green bark interest to it. And I've never seen any Pseudobalamums that had a bark color to it. And during the winter, this one glowed with its yellow-green bark.
Yeah, almost Nanyat-like in that coloration there on the bark. But being Pseudobalam, it'll be interesting to trial these. A lot of these we're going to be getting to some colder places to kind of see what's going on there.
Now, these trees have traditional Pseudobalam foliage. With Arctic Glow, it gets a little bit of a coral color when it first comes out. Then it goes to a nice shade of bright green. Outstanding plants, but this one I think might be the first winter interest Acer Pseudobalam. It'll be interesting to see, can we start taking Pseudobalam and adding cold tolerance to winter interest, taking it down to zone 5 or zone 4B.
And I think a green bark is the first line of defense for that. Coral bark's thinner cambions. We'll see how this green bark performs in some of the colder zones.
And it's like a yellow green. I mean, it really is outstanding.
We've got these grafted, so they're going to start to go and be evaluated in some zone 4s. And so that's where we'll start with these, are some of the colder zone 4s to see how they perform in person in some gardens.
Another one we've got is Arctic Rubies, and this is a more picked up red. This is a brighter red. This is like a more like a cherrier kind of red in the springtime on an Acer Pseudobalam foliage.
I think that's super next level. I'll be honest with you, it beats me, the ones that are out there. Some of these are so next level. I think they're going to be game changers for what color patterns can be in an Acer Pseudobalam. Now, again, I'll tell you, these names aren't defined. It is a series. It'll probably get something like the Heat Seeker series type title for the overall plant. A lot of these have Arctic in them. That doesn't mean they'll necessarily stay there. But some of these you'll be able to find on our website already, just to see some pictures of. Some of these will get a little bit more tweaking before they hit the market.
And the next one, this is just one of many of the lace leaves we've got that we've got in Acer Pseudobalam, but we've got one that we're working on. We're calling it Polar Vortex.
That's scary, man. I like that you took the worst thing possible and tried to flip it into a positive. Right?
Hey, this is hopefully going to be a Pseudobalam that can go down to those zone 4s. And it's coral pink in the spring and it goes to a green. And then this is a weeping lace leaf with a lace leaf Pseudobalam foliage, cascading habit. Guys, we've got some next level stuff coming in here at Mr. Maple through our cold series. You know, we've got the Heat Seeker series. Everyone knows about the Heat Seeker series, but our cold series that we'll be naming soon, these are complete rock stars. And there's a lot of winners in here. These are just a few that had some standout traits. There's definitely some like the Arctic Desire, like you mentioned.
I like the Arctic Desire.
And it has like some like pink kind of red kind of edging to it that gives it something a little bit extra. Brian Rule was walking around there and he was like, Tim, this one needs a name on it, needs to be evaluated, because we got a ton of Pseudobalam hybrids. Sounds
like an Arctic sled romance novel. Like it was a cold day on the tundra.
Literally, Jess's wife, Kate Bradley, was sitting in there at the label printer. I said, all right, we're going to think of different names, and Ice Baby ended up being one.
Polar Bear, I don't mind.
Cooler Than Cool was one, and Ice Cold. It's like, what's cooler than cool? Ice Cold. Outcast reference. But I mean, there are so many just different, whatever we could think of to put a name on these to evaluate them. Because if you have just a code name, you know, in Mr. Maple 123 doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put a name on it, then you can actually take photos of it, evaluate it, know what that actually means, and it sticks in your brain.
So be on the outlook for our cold series. It's at least a year out from now, but I think it's going to be game changers for colors. I think some of these, they were already evaluated for some time frame by Talon Buchholz, so they've already had, you know, Talon's seal of approval on these, so they're already custom-made plants. They're already excellent introductions. We're in the refinement stages of kind of renaming these, working toward what we really want to market the series under and how we want to go about that. So these may change a good bit. Like, these are just working names. They may not stay that way. We'll be open maybe for some ideas for a Cold Seekers series. Won't be Cold Seekers, but you know what I'm talking about. So be thinking about some ideas for us, for more Acer Pseudobalam style names, and know that these are on the works, and I think they're going to be absolute game changers when they hit for some of those Zone 4 winners.
So everybody, make sure you hit this like button if you're watching this on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review. Remember to shop on MrMaple.com. And guys, we work hard each and every week to bring you this podcast. We'd appreciate it if you shared this with your gardening friends. You know, word of mouth is a great way that people can learn. You can just hit the share button, share it on Facebook, and let some more people learn about all these cool trees we've got coming out here at MrMaple.com.
Hey, and if you haven't already, go to Google, give us a 5-star review. We're putting out weekly content here on this podcast for you guys, giving you a little bit behind the scenes. I kind of shudder to release some of our ideas that aren't out there yet, because what ends up happening is
the red panda phenomenon.
Oh my gosh, the hype train goes off the rails. You know how much hype the red panda is getting, and we just included it in one little small thing. People accuse us of the hype machine, but a lot of our customers take it to the next level. So I'm sure there'll be something on this list that will get to a fever pitch before it's done. I could see Pink Panther,
Agape.
I could see Silver Sorter, Agape. I know you guys are going to be in on the cold tolerant series when that gets there. Honorable mention, I didn't have a picture, but honorable mention, Acer Japonicum Aurora Borealis.
Oh, that is a killer Japonicum that has fall colors that look like the Northern Lights.
Incredible. There's some blue in there. I don't know about that, but it does go through some crazy changes. I think you're going to love Aurora Borealis when it hits the market too. I need to get some more pictures of that this spring and fall. These are just a few. These are just 20 of the trees that we really like, that we think are next level, that are going to be coming to Mr. Maple first. Some of these are our introductions. Some of these are ones people send us. If you have interest in new plants, send us some pictures. We'd love to see them. That's one of the things we love doing here at Mr. Maple. Because we have over 1,500 different varieties of Japanese maples, a lot of times people will send us stuff to evaluate. And so we'll get to compare it. Sometimes it's not worth introducing. I mean, sometimes it's like, this looks like Fireglow. I mean, I don't need to name this tree. Travis seems like a great guy, but I don't need to name it after him. Awesome tree. Unfortunately, I don't see any reason to go further into the naming process with this plant.
But we love Japanese maples, and we know you do too. So thank you all so much for listening. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.